My name is Matias Pietila, and it's great to be here. Truth be told, I'm not really sure where I came, but it's always nice to see a full house of people. We had this briefing mail saying that please wear your nice socks. So I've mostly been observing people's socks and trying to understand what kind of people they are based on that. But still would be nice to kind of understand which of you are designers. Okay, and who are developers? All right, and business people. Okay, and something else. Okay, yeah, great to be here. I'm about to tell about prototyping and how to do it smartly. And if you see anything interesting there, you can take photos and feel free to share them online. Actually, I would like to ask if somebody uses Twitter, if you could take a photo of me being here and post it to Twitter, so then I can retweet it and show it to my boss, so I can say that, you know, it was working time that I was here, so it would be useful. All right, so the hashtag is in the corner, so it's kind of hard to see, but it is UXDX Europe. So the topic would be smart prototyping, or how I gave up opposing it and rather became a fan. You see, my history, like described, was that I was the only and first designer in the company, and I kind of thought that it's more valuable if I can quickly create value and kind of minimize the documentation. And prototypes are not really minimal way of documenting anything, so I kind of used to be against them. But since then, I'm kind of learned like the value that they bring, and today I'm preaching another kind of message. Okay, it seems I actually had a slide showing the hashtag just in case you want to use it. All right, so I come from a company called Qvik. Does anybody know Qvik? Okay, some people do. I'm not going to talk more about the company, but we do mobile applications. We've been doing that since 2008. One of the kind of leading agencies that does iOS and Android development and design in Finland. Since then, we've also been expanding to other domains, but still, mobile is what we are known for, and we're doing well with that area. And yeah, so my original goal was to do minimum viable documentation, kind of not even possibly drawing the pixel-perfect mock-up of every screen at all, but rather just communicating the idea and then sitting next to the developer and together tweaking the details so it works, and not really wasting time creating something that will be thrown away anyway. So when people were pitching the idea of doing more prototyping, I was kind of against that. I had been doing prototypes with Keynote and OmniGraffle and HTML mockups and that kind of things, and they felt kind of limiting and too slow to build and hard to maintain. So I was kind of opposing the idea. But now I see that things have changed, and it's a really good idea to really use prototypes. I think one of the reasons what has changed is that business owners have become smarter, so we are actually using prototypes for validating the concept and the product already at earlier phases, rather than just, you know, we have already made up our minds what we're going to build anyway, so now just test the UI. So it's a different kind of prototyping. Another thing is the tools have improved. It's much more flexible nowadays to do prototypes, and okay, not that way. So that makes it more effective. And the last point is also the operational model. At least in our company, it used to be that we were working at our own company, at our own office, serving multiple clients from there. And nowadays, we rather have our designers as team members at our clients' teams, giving them better access to end users and stakeholders, and also more time to actually build these prototypes. So there are multiple factors in game here. So why we should be prototyping, I think one reason is to validate the concept, that it is actually worth building and solves the real problem. Another thing is then validating the user interface, that it works, that usability is there. And then the last thing is about optimizing the user experience, all the eye candy and UI magic, doing all those cool animations. That's something that you want to use prototyping tools for. So if you are like a startup person and like this kind of jargon. So it's worth understanding if you are at the early phase of like problem solution fit, or if you are towards product market fit, or if you are at the scaling phase. So depending on that, you want to build likely different kind of prototypes because they serve different kinds of needs. Okay, let's first take a look at the first kind of prototyping, validating the concept. So some points to bear in mind here is that the reason to do this is that you can communicate the concept effectively, and you can get useful feedback because people are talking about the same thing, something tangible that you can give people to feel. And they can also be useful for internal marketing. But it's good to understand that depending on your goal, you should be selecting your fidelity level. And then again, fidelity level should kind of define the tool you are using. So don't just start with a certain tool, but first understand what you're doing and why. Also good to remember is that concept validation is different than usability testing. So when you are testing this kind of prototypes, you shouldn't be doing a usability test, but rather more like a problem interview kind of thing. It's a term by Ash Moria that I kind of like as an idea, that you're not validating a solution, but rather showing if there is a real problem and you want to understand that. Okay, some examples. Really simple thing. This is actually like a web form, but we had this client who is a doctor who had a hypothesis. Yeah, okay. That kind of thing anyway, about a kind of algorithm that lets him understand if people are having sleep apnea. And yeah, he could have built an app, but he rather just ordered a prototype for us. Actually, he never understood that we didn't make a real app. He thought it was a real app, but anyway, we spent less than a day creating a prototype that he can use and validate his idea. We were able to program the simple algorithm inside the prototype, and now he can test if it works and doesn't have to really invest too much. Also, this startup called Soul, we helped them back in the day, back when chat UIs were a thing, to help build this kind of virtual chat thing that lets you talk with like a business coach to develop yourself as a better person. And yeah, it's something that would have been hard to really implement. We also were kind of assuming that you wouldn't be able to even prototype it well enough, but it turns out that we were able to do a pretty convincing thing in the prototyping tool that kind of feels like a real tool, and quickly they were able to use this as a mechanism for getting funding, and then the thing was built based on that. Nowadays, I would not instruct anybody to do it like this. Nowadays, there are good platforms for actually prototyping chat UIs, but back then they were not around yet. Another thing that you often want to do when doing prototypes, this is from a hackathon last year, is you want to have this kind of like fake navigational elements that you go to different user stories or different scenarios. So you've built something that you can then easily test with that kind of things. In this case, you see that it's like stupidly polished for being a concept prototype, because sometimes you also want to sell an idea and you want to make it look nice looking to better secure a deal for you. But in real life, if you were just about to test an assumption, you likely wouldn't want to polish it that much. And sometimes you don't even want to build anything. In one case last year, we did this kind of a fake product. It had 3 main concepts, and we wanted to compare if any of them would be relevant and how they are prioritized between people. So we did this kind of fake emails, and they were sent to thousands of people, and then there was this try now call to action button at the bottom, and that took you to like a landing page with beta sign up. And we had some stupid questions there just to make the form long enough so it would be tedious to fill it, so people who actually do it are valuable and really interested. And then we were measuring how people were clicking through the email button and how many actually ended up filling the form, and how these different concepts were doing there. And in the end, we decided that we shouldn't build anything, so it was a quick experiment. Yeah, but it was success in that sense that we actually learned quickly. Okay, that's the kind of first level of prototyping. Then is the maybe more traditional one where you validate the usability of a user interface. And yeah, it's good to remember that you can do very interactive and realistic prototypes if you want to invest time in that. And especially in mobile context, it's very useful to have something you can feel in your hand as opposed to just seeing some kind of wireframe on your computer screen. And depending on the tool, you can also use real data and branching logic and some like if-else statements and that kind of things that actually save you time. You don't have to draw every single screen in Sketch, but rather you have some logic there. It also may help developers later on to understand, okay, this is the logic, so we can use the same logic on a pseudo level. But yeah, really important to minimize waste is not to prototype anything stupid. There was once a prototyping tool on its Facebook page. Somebody was asking, like, can you prototype iOS keyboard with this tool? And yeah, you can, but you likely shouldn't. I mean, iOS keyboard has been built already, so you don't have to recreate that. So try to focus on something you're actually testing. Also, when it comes to visual design, you likely want to minimize that to some extent because maintaining all the different visual styles can be time-consuming. So you rather want to make something quick and dirty that looks good enough that people will believe it and people will understand it, but you don't have to really polish every detail. Here, for example, is an example how we used to do with Tallink Silja a couple of years ago. We did this kind of cruise program thing. So it was built in Axure, and you can see that it's visually glitchy and basically it has mistakes, but you can now quickly click through different states there and try out different scenarios. So we were able to use this tool and go talk to people on board and do some quick testing. And we didn't really have to worry about the looks too much. Also for VR, the train company, we are currently building the new ticket vending machine for them. And for them, we also built some ugly screens. We were actually comparing two different approaches to the ticket buying process. One is the more traditional kind of wizard kind of mode where you go step by step, and the other one is this that I adopt summary mode where you first see everything that is pre-selected and then you can edit the selections. And typically, if you don't want to change anything, if you're just buying the ticket to the next departing train, you can just press done and just pay it. So it likely should be more efficient for that kind of usage. So we quickly prototyped them both, and we were able to test these things. In the end, we decided that we want to go with the more traditional wizard model, but what we did is that we actually, behind the scenes, it works like a summary model in a sense that it does pre-select you the next train, and if you know, you can just skip to payment and just be done with it. But if you are a more normal user, it kind of guides you step by step. So we kind of took best of both worlds. But being able to quickly prototype them was a good way to be able to make an informed decision on this. And yeah, in the end, it kind of ended up looking nicer. It doesn't have to look ugly anyway. Okay, the last way of prototyping, or the last reason for that, is optimizing the user experience. Now, when it comes to animation and nice things like we mostly all know nowadays, it's not just skin deep. It has a reason why you want to make cool, nice things. If we think of animations and motion design, it serves three different functions. One is that we can enhance usability by guiding user attention to what is important or what we want to attract. That there can be some kind of pulsating, nicely moving thing that user will focus on. It can also be that we enhance usability by creating a clear spatial model how things are connected, and animating between these states. We then make it easier for users to understand where I am now and where am I going. And the last point is this psychological effect, where you rather get users feel good by making something that is nice and moving and tangible and all this. There's a whole book about this stuff that I recommend to everybody who's interested. Good old Donald. And yeah, the basic idea of prototypes is that they are disposable. You should be willing to throw them away. That's why I always love when I get to have this kind of talks where I can recycle my old prototypes. You know, they have been thrown away already, but here they are again. So some random things that have been done in random tools. Some of them ended up developed like that. Some didn't. And the Vault thing, actually, I haven't been designing Vault at all. I just made that for fun to test out this tool. There is also this commercial reason why you want to do nice looking stuff, because if you first prototype it nicely and then you show that to PO, the PO is kind of committed to that level of wow already. And then if you deliver something worse, he starts asking like, why didn't you build it nicely like I already saw? Because people likely like to, you know, it's harder to give up something than that you already kind of had than to never have had it at all. So that way you can kind of trick the POs to raise the bar a bit and do something cool. But yeah, a word of warning. So if you're not careful, you might end up screwing up many things. You can waste time by recreating things that already exist. You can waste time by creating a prototype that is hard to maintain, and then you just instead of adding value to your product, you just end up wasting your time maintaining that prototype. You need to learn when to give up and start over instead of always trying to add all the new functionality in the same prototype. You can also waste time by creating something that would be trivial to develop for real. Sometimes the real tool for prototyping is actually writing code and not just using prototyping tools. I see that there is kind of a tendency that people are becoming more siloed now with these tools, that designers build prototypes in their world and developers then code them, but sometimes it would actually be useful to have developers more involved there and let them build the prototype. Also, sometimes you see people limiting their design based on what their prototyping tool can do. So if you're using InVision and you cannot do side swiping, so then you end up doing a design with no side swiping, which is kind of stupid. Yeah, or it might be that you use Flinto, which lets you do a ton of cool effects, and then you end up creating something mega complex that nobody can ever implement. So it may look cool in your demo. The worst that can happen is that your PO already gets fixed with that effect, and then you can't pull it off, so then you are out of luck. All in all, if you fail to communicate the role of the prototype, and that way you end up getting unnecessary or even distracting feedback, so it's another way of waste. So some quick comments about the tools. All in all, I think that whatever the tool is, a good tool is something that makes simple things easy and complex things possible. And Flinto is my current favorite tool. It kind of fits those needs. You can quickly create like InVision style screen-based prototypes, but also you can really animate them like piece by piece and do some cool micro interaction with that. Limitations are that it's hard to share. It's an iOS only solution, and you actually have to install the app and then get the file in the app. So it's not something you can just share a link to a business stakeholder on an Android phone. Also, sometimes it just breaks when you use sketch symbols and plugins and all that. Principle is a similar kind of tool that lets you do nice mobile stuff, really cool micro interaction things. It's somewhat more limited in some effects than Flinto. Then again, it has better support for scrolling. So again, you kind of have to know what you're doing to choose the correct tool. Also there, it's hard to share because it's app-based. Then there's this good old Axure that many people think is still is already kind of lost its role in this scene. It's more like web-oriented, but it's still surprisingly powerful and lets you do almost anything. You cannot get that kind of high fidelity output because it's web-based, but still it's really worth considering, and it's easy to also create this kind of like static links that you can just know that they will always work because it's web-based, and you can flexibly manipulate the links that you are sharing. And then there are others. I didn't mention now InVision because I'm not a huge fan of that. I think it's kind of limited, and I'm surprised by its popularity. But nothing bad against that either. It's useful sometimes. And this whole scene is changing so fast. I mean, we are all now waiting for this InVision Studio that will come soon. And this kind of reminds me, because 3.5 years ago was the first time I did some kind of presentation about prototyping. Back then I was already like a believer. And back then I was telling that Pixate Studio will be coming soon. And then a year later it was killed. So these things are changing really quickly. So it will be nice to see what happens next. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to InVision Studio, and great to see what they come up with. But yeah, so to recap why you should be prototyping, first point is that you can validate the concept. You can ensure that you actually have your problem solution fit. The other point is that you can validate the user interface, and you can test the usability, and you need to, or you want to, pay attention to the fidelity level and kind of make smart decisions like how much you want to prototype. And the last one is then optimizing the user experience, making all the mouth-watering effects there. There you want to really collaborate with developers and together understand how to implement those things. But it's typically better to be able to show your idea than just to try to explain it. It's more likely it will be correctly understood. Yeah, that was that. We still have some time for comments and questions. Thanks.